More than 20,000 people once lived and worked here, and it was known as Little Hong Kong. What happened to this place? The abandoned buildings in Devastation, once a thriving town known as Little Shanghai due to coal mining prosperity, now stand deserted. This area used to flourish with a population of around 40,000. However, the sudden disappearance of the entire workforce, leaving the town deserted for over 30 years, has led to speculation and mystery. This prosperous area has turned into an empty city, with no one living in the buildings everywhere. Downtown Guangzhou has been reduced to a ghost town. This area is one crowded with people. Guangzhou is one of the most bustling cities in southern China. However, in the Baiyun district of Guangzhou, there exists a group of unfinished buildings that have been abandoned for 30 years. These high-rise structures stand by the roadside, exhibiting a rather dilapidated appearance, with some even in a state of disrepair. A drone's aerial view reveals 165 densely packed structures. In the vast expanses of China, existing a disconcerting and haunting phenomenon, expansive urban landscapes referred to as ghost cities. These areas are marked by a chilling emptiness, void of the usual vibrant signs of life, and they starkly deviate from the typical expectations of bustling streets and contemporary structures. The planning and construction of these cities were predicated on overly optimistic projections of population growth and real estate demand, ignoring actual migration patterns and socio-economic shifts. This led to the emergence of ghost cities due to strategic dislocations and the absence of essential services, with some areas reporting less than a quarter of the expected population levels. Despite their unsettling nature, these ghost cities embody a troubling convergence of ambition, economic strategy, and the distressing repercussions of swift urbanization. This area used to flourish with a population of around 40,000, boasting facilities like banks, schools, cinemas, and a club. However, the sudden disappearance of the entire workforce, leaving the town deserted for over 30 years, has led to speculation and mystery. It is suggested that the mass exodus is attributed to the construction of a large hydroelectric power station along the Great Ditch River. The houses in the town were dormitories for the workers involved in the construction. Despite its past prosperity, the town was left abandoned, becoming a haunting reminder of a bygone era. But the reasons behind the abrupt evacuation remain undisclosed, leading the public to speculate about the hidden truths. The deserted houses on the hillsides now stand as a testament to the passage of time, with the once vibrant town turning into a ghost town. In this complicated situation, there's a big problem involving the balance of supply and demand for housing in China. It's influenced by various factors such as government policies, cultural preferences for investing in property, and strategies for planning cities. The urbanization rate in China has been rapidly increasing, going from 35.8% to 61% in the last 2 decades, as per World Bank data. To keep up with this trend, China has been aggressively constructing new homes at a rate of 15 million per year, surpassing the combined output of the US and Europe. However, despite the massive number of new buildings, a significant portion of them remains empty. Reports suggest that around 20% of urban housing properties in China, totaling about 65 million units, are vacant. What's interesting is that these vacant properties are not old or in decay, they are brand new constructions bought as investments, with the hope that their value will increase over time. This situation highlights a major issue. There's a mismatch between the government-driven increase in housing supply and the actual demand for people looking to live in these homes. The abandoned buildings in Devastation, once a thriving town known as Little Shanghai due to coal mining prosperity, now stand deserted. The town, boasting schools, hospitals, shopping malls, and entertainment venues, flourished as a renowned coal resource area in Liaoning province. Over 30,000 residents, including miners and retirees, contributed to the bustling atmosphere. However, the town's decline began as continuous underground coal mining led to dwindling reserves. Until recently, the coal resources were almost depleted, causing economic hardship and massive layoffs. Safety concerns further accelerated the town's abandonment. Filled with water to prevent geological disasters, Devastation became a ghost town, with only a few elderly residents unwilling to leave. The streets, once vibrant, now echo with silence, portraying a stark contrast between past prosperity and present desolation. The Nantpio Mining Bureau's bankruptcy added to the residents' challenges, prompting many to seek better opportunities elsewhere, especially the younger generation migrating to the south. At the heart of the ghost city's dilemma is a stark mismatch between developers' elaborate visions and the physical reality of these plans. With upwards of 65 million vacant houses and urban units enough to house the population of France, these cities are monuments to overreach, spaces filled with luxury amenities that remain unused. The absence of critical infrastructure, such as markets, zero markets in some cases, schools, with under 5% having adequate educational facilities, and hospitals, less than 10% with accessible healthcare in most of these cities, has directly led to their abandonment. These numbers starkly contrast the initial projections of flourishing communities and illustrate the scale of misalignment between development ambitions and practical livability. The Yuding Mountain Villa in Shenzhen's Longgang district stands as a testament to a failed high-end residential project initiated in 1992. Originally envisioned as a luxurious European-style villa complex, the development, comprising 124 villas, succumbed to financial breakdowns, leaving the construction incomplete and triggering a cascade of issues. The root cause of this abandonment lies in the soaring property prices in Shenzhen during that period. The initial developer, enticed by the potential for substantial profits, purchased the land at a relatively modest price of 1,000 yuan per square meter. However, the financial strain led to a lack of funds for the project's completion, leaving the construction team unpaid, and some individuals, facing homelessness or seeking to offset debts, moved into the unfinished villas. Over the years, Yuding Mountain Villa transformed into a ghost city with exposed red brick walls and chaotic structures. The open spaces were repurposed as parking lots for external business operations. Despite the significant increase in land value, reaching around 2 billion yuan due to the area's development over the past 30 years, no real estate developers have taken over the project. The current state of the villa complex is marked by safety risks due to makeshift habitation, with signs of domestic waste and renovations visible. The selection of locations for these new cities, coupled with misguided investments in transportation infrastructure, has further exacerbated their desertion. Despite the initial hypothesis that proximity to high-speed rail lines would drive population growth and urban development, many of these cities have instead become isolated outposts. Planned transportation hubs never materialized or were constructed miles away from their intended catchment areas, leaving these supposed urban centers disconnected and inconveniently located. The promise of high-speed rail connectivity, a cornerstone of initial valuations, has largely gone unfulfilled, contributing significantly to the urban exodus witnessed in these locales. Strangely, all the shops here have their doors wide open, allowing anyone to enter without any hindrance. Even the furniture inside the houses remains intact, like this one on top of the freezer, appearing quite new. The tables, fire extinguishers, and a bar counter are all well preserved. It seems as if the people here vanished overnight. In fact, the drawer cabinet of this bar counter is still intact, seemingly used for invoicing. The drawer can be opened, appearing brand new. The restroom also looks very new, as if it has hardly been used. Unfortunately, the freezer has been knocked over, and the glass is shattered. What a strange phenomenon. What happened to this place? The economic models underpinning these ghost cities were fundamentally flawed. Properties were initially overvalued, with prices set in anticipation of a boom that never arrived. In many cases, prices have since plummeted, leaving owners with assets deeply devalued by as much as 40 to 50% in some regions. This depreciation is symptomatic of a broader socio-economic shift. The youth unemployment rate, hovering around 46.5%, has bred a culture of disillusionment, with many opting to lay flat as a form of passive resistance to the pressures exerted by society. This phenomenon has not only deterred investment in these areas but has also fostered a generation increasingly disinterested in traditional markers of success, such as homeownership and marriage. This cultural pivot, coupled with the economic downturn, has left many of these ambitious projects in limbo. This old part of Yumen City was once a thriving oil town built on a cliff. As described by the people, it was a typical company town that prospered due to the state-owned oil company located there. At its peak, the oil company provided jobs for tens of thousands of workers and their families. The company also built ample housing, commercial buildings, and recreational facilities like the large soccer field seen in the video. Workers enjoyed good benefits and a relatively high standard of living thanks to the oil company. However, as oil resources diminished, the company began downsizing and eventually closed the oil fields. With the main employer gone, most residents moved away to seek jobs elsewhere. New housing and facilities were built in a new town nearby, leaving the old city on the cliff abandoned and decaying. As explored in the video, deserted buildings now have broken windows, crumbling walls, and wild animals roaming inside. The only remaining residents are a handful of elderly people unwilling or unable to relocate. In the end, the old part of the city turned into a ghost town as the oil resources were exhausted. It went from housing tens of thousands of oil workers to just a few holdouts. With no jobs or amenities left, the city was unable to sustain itself once the oil company shut down. This boom and bust cycle is typical of single-industry towns that depend on non-renewable natural resources. It serves as a cautionary tale about the impermanence of such oil-based economies. Only remnants of better times remain among the empty buildings left on the cliff. It is clear that China's venture into creating new urban utopias has, in many cases, resulted in cautionary tales of development gone awry. The ghost cities that dot the landscape serve as tangible reminders of the pitfalls of overzealous urban planning, disconnected from the lived realities and needs of the people it seeks to serve. With over 50 identified municipalities languishing in this state of underutilization, the scale of this urban overshoot is both astonishing and a sobering marker of development missteps. As the country forges ahead, the lessons gleaned from the desolation of these once promising cities will be pivotal in reshaping China's urban development trajectory towards more sustainable and vital community life. Due to lousy planning, thousands of houses are abandoned. Known as the #1 ghost town in Chongqing, 30,000 people were evacuated from here 10 years ago. More than 20,000 people once lived and worked here, and it was known as Little Hong Kong. Nowadays, the prosperity is no longer there. The repercussions of these ghost cities extend far beyond the confines of unused infrastructure, painstakingly impacting both the micro and macroeconomic fabric of China. On a local level, the financial viability of these cities becomes increasingly precarious. Massive debts incurred during construction phases remain unpaid as projected real estate revenues falter, leading local governments to grapple with the dual burdens of financial strain and underdeveloped land assets. The trickle-down effect of these missteps is palpable in the diminishing economic indicators of such regions, including slower GDP growth rates and dwindling fiscal revenues, further exacerbating the divide between thriving urban centers and lagging smaller cities. On a broader scale, the ghost city syndrome underscores critical flaws in China's urban governance and planning paradigms. It illuminates the challenges faced in balancing urban expansion with sustainable development goals, questioning the efficacy of a growth model heavily reliant on real estate and construction. The situation also places a spotlight on the need for a coherent and coordinated urban planning strategy that aligns with demographic trends, resource management, and genuine demand for urban living spaces.